Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm a journalist, author, interviewer, and broadcaster who's interviewed roughly 1,400 celebrities. And one of those interviewees, Tom Jones, once joked that I was dangerous in that he felt talking to me was, quote, like talking to a mate in a pub, and that he'd have to watch what he said and remind himself. Also tellingly, at one point, when Tom began to tell me what sounded like the typically evasive tale he told about his extramarital love affairs at the time, I stopped him and said something like, Tom, I hate passing on untruths to my readers, so unless what you're about to tell me is totally true, don't tell me anything at all. Tom nodded his head, laughed, and fell silent, prompting me to laugh and say, okay, where do we go from here? And we moved on to another subject, his music. This brings me to the subject of Neil Sedaka. Yesterday, June the 4th, 2021, I uploaded a podcast that was in fact a radio interview I did celebrating the man and his music in 1997. During that interview with Mike Murphy, I quoted one of two interviews I myself had done with Neil, one over the phone and one face-to-face, in which he compared himself to Barry Manilow. And I summed up what he said by paraphrasing the man as follows: don't compare me to Barry Manilow. I have balls, I am soul, I have substance. At the time, I was doing my damnedest to remember the actual words Neil had said, but my sense was that they were along those lines. Yesterday, I also used my variation of that quote as the headline for my podcast. However, when I uploaded the Sedaka podcast onto a wonderful Facebook page that, as with my radio interview in 1997, celebrates Neil Sedaka and his music, and on which I'd received many kind comments when I posted part of the phone interview I did with Neil, this time round, many Sedaka fans said he would never have used those words, either in public or in private. This, to me, is a denial of the humanity of Neil Sedaka. It also stands to reason that if I hate passing on to readers or listeners to my radio shows or podcasts untruths, I hate being called a liar, or at the very least, in a coded sense, a purveyor of lies about Neil Sedaka. And so this morning, I dug out the old cassette tape, checked the quote, and I stand over the way I paraphrased it on the radio and in my podcast headline. Although pedantic people might say that, strictly speaking, Neil's quote was, I'm not Barry Manilow, come on. I have balls, and my songs have soul and substance. Judge for yourself and enjoy the rest of the chat. By the way, if you want to read the original Rock Magazine article based on this interview with Neil Sedaka, check out my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Right, but there is that kind of that bias against doing something.
I was never accepted by the acid, by the very, very FM. I know that's a known fact.
Yeah.
I'm not Barry Manilow, come on.
Well, that's where people will do that. I mean, what's the major difference? Point it out to them. I know the difference. Point it out. You know what I mean?
I have balls.
Right.
The song has soul and has substance.
Right.
There's something there. There's something there other than sentimentality.
Right. You did say.
There's rhythm.
Well, there's an awareness too of the doo-wop history. There's the early history. There's the kind of all that stuff. You know.
I mean, I'm not a bull.
Right. But I mean, it is probable, or it is possible when you go, this is where they're going to link you. They're going to say ex-teen idol as with the Manilow school.
Well, they can think what they like. They're
okay.
wrong.
Well, when you go, what song do you want them to play to prove otherwise?
When I go, I think there's a couple on the new album.
Right. Do you want to name them?
Blinded by Your Love.
Okay.
When a Love Affair is Through. You Turn Me On.
Right. Now, are you only saying that to sell a new album, or are they really?
Well,
you feel
the Emergence album.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Love this thing. Cardboard California.
Yeah. Well, that was one of my favourite. We talked about that over the phone.
Yes.
You know, there was stuff there that was very innovative.
The Solitaire album, Trying to Say Goodbye, Don't Let It Mess Your Mind. There's a lot of very good numbers.
Right. You said to me on the phone, and I did ask you, in the down period, you said you had no drink or drugs problem. Why did you keep so clearly away from that when the 60s went so crazy?
I certainly tried a reefer in the 60s, but I'm not an addicted personality.
Right.
I liked a couple of wines that
Right.
relaxed me.
But you would be the opposite. You would be the popular music artist who kept it all in control. While so others just let everything, life, creativity, talent dissolve.
I remember when the we had a big article in America. What was it? The Times, the Sunday Times, the comeback of Neil Sedaka
All right.
and others. He's very disciplined. He's very he's everything that rock is not.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, sue them.
But it's a legitimate comeback, they said in Rolling Stone. This is the new Jim Croce in the 70s.
All right, right.
They said this is, that's when the music takes me, reminded them of, you had a group that had a thing in riff. I mean, I was legitimized in rock and roll in Rolling Stone. Then, of course, in America, you know, after a couple of years, if you have too many hits, they start chipping away at you.
Well, it's the same here. You know, it's the same here. Well, I have seen, I mean, your albums are quite glowingly reviewed in the Rolling Stone Anthology of Rock Albums. I mean, there's about 5 of them get the 3 to 4 stars. But people tend not to think of that. Well, the last question is, there is just, I mean, people are, I would, like I've interviewed a lot of, as I say, my interest is in popular music, particularly with a kind of strong classical influence. But there's a growing, Graham Marcus, I talked to him recently about Dead Elvis, you know, he wrote Mystery Train, and there's a guy called Simon Frith in Britain, where we're beginning to say, forget this idea that rock and roll started, even in 52, when you heard Earth Angel sitting with Carole King. Forget that it started then. Don't think of it as rock and roll. Think of the Union as black and white music, as New Orleans 1911. You know what I mean? Let's start looking at the history of music, popular music. Stephen Foster.
One of the greatest and a great influence on me.
Right, right.
Sometimes when I sit at the piano, having not written for several months, I'll come out with a Stephen Foster song. Close to my body, like I was living in those times.
Right, right.
Stephen Foster, yes, was one of the first rock and roll writers.
Yeah, but that's where, if we start, as we get to the end of the century, looking back on a century of popular music rather than the last 30-year tendency of, let's look on it since Elvis did Heartbreak Hotel, we've got rock and roll, well then maybe all that pigeonholing will dissolve.
Teenage market, certainly, and young people, it might, yes, it should be taken as a whole. Absolutely, New Orleans jazz, race records, the blues people.
Well, down in Washington, the gamut. Sinatra. I mean, I had to fight to do an analysis of Frank Sinatra in this magazine, and then finally they realized the relevance. You know what I mean?
My son, you're right, who is 25, has been listening to Sinatra for 3 years.
Right.
I was very surprised.
Right.
I said, oh, no, this is American. This is it.
The start of American. Well, Sinatra was listening to Billie Holiday, blending black rhythms. Bing Crosby was doing it with King Oliver.
That's right.
So I don't understand why popular. And I think there's a new guy called Bobby Valentino. I don't know if you've heard him. He's a pasticheur. He does a Crosby imitation beautifully. But he's gone right back to 1912, and he's saying, no, look, and alongside that he'll have a Jimi Hendrix guitar.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then he'll go to country. And then he'll go somewhere else, and you say, yeah, this is what it's about.
I see 20-year-olds in my concerts.
Right.
Not coming older people.
Who as the last question would you rate as some of the best songwriters then of the century, if we want to take that broad canvas?
George Gershwin, above everyone else.
Yeah.
Because of the classical and popular.
Right.
Of the pop music.
But it was George and Ira, wouldn't it be George and Ira? You're talking about George.
Ira.
Yeah, as the team.
Yes.
And George musically.
George musically as the classical.
Yeah.
Hot.
Right.
Is it hot?
Right. Rather, yeah.
Irving Berlin. Jerome Kern.
Right.
When I hear Shovel today, I fall on the floor. Andrew Lloyd Webber. I don't care what they say.
All right. Okay.
I don't care what they say. It is moving.
Right.
It's emotional.
And in the rock field, since the 60s, you.
I like Hot.
Right.
I like Seal.
Right.
I have a chart in front of me.
Okay.
I like, I have to look at the chart.
Okay. Would you be as aware of anything from Ireland, like the U2s or any of that?
Excellent.
I mean, have you heard?
They're excellent. I'm not that familiar.
Sure.
I thought Elton was marvelous.
Right.
I think,
Well, Elton took a lot of his piano hooks from you and his piano, didn't he?
we won't have to
Right.
On the new album, I have Greek rock. I call it Greek rock.
All right.
3 songs that are with bouzouki guitar.
Right.
I was inspired by Greek music. I think they're going to start a whole new thing.
Right, right.
It's belly dancing music with rock and roll.
How much at that? Because I asked you originally about the Jewish thing. You are of Turkish descent too.
Middle East.
Where does that come out in the music? Does anybody ever say to you, Neil, go check out your own musical roots. Stop producing American pop. Go mix in.
I've thought about the cantorials and the Jewish music.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it yet, but I've thought about doing it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
But when you hear the Greek rock.
Well, think of Al Jolson, the jazz singer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the same tension was set up there. The collision between
the tradition, the religion, and how could you on holiday not sing the
I would love to see that actually being explored, because I know a lot of Irish musicians I've talked to are delving much deeper into their own Celtic base. So I would like to see Paul Simon, yourself, and that go right down. All right. Good stuff, Neil. I can leave it there. That was wonderful. I enjoyed that. Right away. Yeah, no, that was no. I'm very interested in popular music.
I hope they put the article in.
Oh, they will. I won't have any problem getting the article in, but I just didn't want, as I said, one of the younger
guys. That was very kind of you.
That other stuff, you know. Well, I think it's no harm for people to realise there are other traditions going right back to 1900, as opposed to Elvis and Heartbreak Hotel. Because I believe that for a long time. Mind you, as I told you that time, I also bought your greatest hits album when I was 12.
How
so
old
I had
are
to
you
do
now?
that 14. So I thank you for the first album, but you were going way back.
Great.
You know? Okay. Hi, Joe Jackson here again. I thank you for listening to this edition of the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast. And don't forget, if you want to read the article I wrote based on this chat with Neil Sedaka, or gain access to the tapes for personal or professional reasons, contact me via my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com.